Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today we are going to be discussing the recently released challenges for 3.18 and the Sentinel League, and hopefully everything is working currently with the stream. I am just going to try to get some clarification of that. So I will just quickly see if we are on a stream delay at the moment or whether it's working. If you're watching this after the fact, this is going to be some discussion as the challenges were announced. So we don't yet know for certain what the actual details of some of these are going to be like in game, but this is based upon pre-announcement discussion. I've also finally managed to get chat set up on this, which was something that was giving me some trouble and is why this stream is starting a little bit later than planned. However, the Sentinel Challenge rewards have been revealed, and there are two different armor sets. There's the Ophidian set and the Ophidian Lord set. The Ophidian set appears to be a replacement for previous 36 challenge rewards. So it's going to be fairly reasonable to get that if you're a determined player. It's not necessarily something that a casual player can get without a little bit of help, but you can get there. You'll just need to improve. The Ophidian Lord set is something that's new. This isn't replacing any previous rewards. This is something over and above what used to exist. To get the Ophidian Lord set, which looks very similar to the Ophidian set plus a white glow, you're going to need to beat a wide swathe of different content at endgame. However, I've had a quick flick through. We're going to discuss every challenge on this stream, but so far I've had a bit of a look through at what's available in these challenges. From an RNG perspective, there is one challenge that is bonkers from RNG, and that's the Harvest one. That requires 3 very rare events, and I think almost no one's going to get that one in solo self-found, and it's going to be pretty rare even in Trade League. As for the other ones, there's a number that require a bit of luck, but that aren't ridiculous. So for instance, and it's actually coming up in chat at the moment, the Chayula one. The Chayula one was very, very nasty when it was in Breach. However, there are ways that you can bias towards getting more Chayula encounters in maps now. And as a result, I don't think this one's going to be particularly nasty. Likewise, one there's been a bit of discussion on the Path of Exile subreddit about has been the one to do to defeat a Breach Lord in a map. Doesn't have to be Chayula, it can be any of them, while you're under the effects of a Covetous Shrine. And so people are thinking, oh, Covetous Shrines are rare, Chayula, Breach Lord encounters in the wild are rare, but you can bias your maps to have that come up more often. I do think players are going to want to allocate Covetous Shrines this league and leave them allocated for a while, but I do think that you will also get that one within maybe 60 to 100 maps just by random dumb chance of having a bias both towards Breach encounters and also Covetous Shrine encounters. So that's going to be something that's a little bit more reasonable than a lot of people think. Anyways, let's go through the challenges one by one, discuss the purpose of the challenge first, because some of them are just plain tutorials. Some of them require you to set up your Atlas in a specific way, and some of them are mean. Learning the ropes is the first one. This is something that you can do by Act 3. Equipping an item with 4 or more linked sockets is something that you're going to want to do early in Act 3 anyway. Socket a jewel in your passive tree is also something you're probably going to do. You're probably also going to want to do around Act 3, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later. And then purchasing a gem from a vendor is something that you should be doing in Act 1. And that's something that a lot of players may not do if they're brand new to the game, but it's a good little reminder, hey, you can buy jewels from vendors. Second one is Basics of Sentinels. Now, I assume that this is a tutorial for the new League content, and we're going to have to explore some of the League content itself to work out how rare some of these things are. But deploying a Sentinel is likely something you can do in your first zone, so this is something that you can do in the coast zone. I think a lot of veteran players might skip over the Sentinels for a little while. I think the Sentinels look like they're going to be something for when you are solidly at tier 16 maps. You're probably going to get a lot of extra power out of them, but I don't think that they're something that's absolutely necessary early on. Rare Monster empowered by a Sentinel, Rogue Exile empowered by a Sentinel, and Act Boss, which is empowered by a Sentinel. So Rare Monster and Rogue Exile will happen by accident. Act Boss is a deliberate choice, and I do think that this one's going to be a little bit of a nuisance, especially if there is a setup where you cannot encounter Sentinels, where you cannot use Sentinels in content that is much lower tier than your character is. This is the case for a number of League mechanics. You can't do them in low tier content, and we're going to have to see, you might need to do either Depraved Trinity or Katava if you don't do this while you're leveling. I think it might be worth your while looking for the easiest Sentinel you can find and using that on Merveil just to get this one out of the way so that you don't have to go and run Depraved Trinity or run the horror that is doing all of the stuff for Katara. Well, actually, no, Depraved Trinity is worse. Like the Act 9 and 10 bosses, they both take a long time to get to, even if your character far outgears the content. So, yeah, I think with that in mind, you probably want to do this while you're leveling. Realistically, I think doing it for Merveil is the way, if we can. We don't know exactly when all the different types of Sentinels come online, so we'll have to find that one out, but it looks like it's something that you're going to want to get done when you can. I'm just quickly checking if our chat is working, and it looks, yeah, excellent, it is. Yeah, I do think XXII in chat is saying that the challenges look brutal this league, and that they're feeling a little bit discouraged from playing SSF. SSF is a hard mode. It does make getting your challenges done harder. And ultimately, I think a lot of players might elect to start the league in solo self-found if they find that's the most fun way to play the game, but then migrate over. Where I think that this is really brutal is if hardcore is your preference. If hardcore is your preference, you don't have the option to migrate to softcore, and that is probably going to be a significant nail in the coffin of the hardcore player base this league. I think that a lot of people that are looking for a significant increase in difficulty from the core game, but not as much as hardcore solo self-found. At the moment, they seem to mostly go SSF softcore, but some of them go hardcore trade. I think that hardcore trade might be completely dead, and those people might go for softcore solo self-found instead as their hard mode of choice, because then they can migrate once they've done everything that they're going to get themselves. Of course, though, you can start in solo self-found and get yourself going well, and then maybe find that you need to migrate just to get the Harvest one and a couple of the others. And the other thing to keep in mind as well is that your goals are lower this league. If you're the sort of player that's gotten 36 challenges in the past, the equivalent is 24 this time. And it looks like the hardest you're going to need to do for 24 is 1 or 2 of the Uber bosses. Well, in this league to get 36, you probably had to do 60% Elder Slayers and the Feared Scoured. They were probably your 35th and 36th challenges, respectively. And Elder Slayer's 60% is probably harder than doing Cyrus at level 85. I do think that the bosses, though, most of them on hardcore they'll get downed, but it will be by a much smaller number of players than are currently playing hardcore. And we will see much more of a push away from hardcore as a result of this. Vendor recipes is the next challenge. Magic Boots with 10% move speed is the Quicksilver Flask recipe. It's Quicksilver Flask, an augmentation, and a scoured set of boots. Or you can use boots that have got, I think they need to be magic. No, they don't need to be magic. They can be any rarity, and they have a move speed roll of 25% or less. And then that will give you the next tier of movement speed above them. You can't use this to get 35% move speed boots, only up to 30. And it's generally not worth using at endgame, but it's a recipe that's worth knowing it exists. It's something you can do if you get very lucky on Quicksilver Flask drops in Act 1. It's something you can do to get yourself your first set of 15% move speed boots. Orb of Chance, sell 2 items with the same name, is the easiest one. That comes online easily when you get to mirrored strongboxes. Unique item. This is vendoring 3 copies of the same unique item that are all uncorrupted. We'll give you back an uncorrupted version of that unique item. Very, very easy to do with a number of uniques. There's also some specific recipes, but that's the easiest way. For a skill gem, I am trying to think what the best one is here. Bitter Blossom. Vendor a Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom drops everywhere, and it's not called Bitter Blossom, it's Bitter Dream. That stupid staff, that stupid scepter that has all of the 6 different supports. Vendor that item and you'll get this. Or you can vendor the replica one if you want, but you probably don't want to do that. Vendoring the replica one is best done for the recipe that gives you the elemental penetration support. So a couple of different options there. There's a comment from Grand in chat that bossing is going to be very lucrative if you're carrying people, and I think that's the case. You can definitely carry a lot of people through some of these encounters if you get really good at one specific encounter. So let's say that you get really good at the Uber version of the Shaper fight. You can do it deathless all the time. You can take 3 or 4 people in with you, and then you can get them to pay you some currency for that. And then in exchange, you can then go and get other people. You can then buy services for the bosses you haven't yet mastered. A really good comment there from Ashton in chat that Gemina Scour works for the skill gem recipe as well. So for those of you that don't remember it, if you have, say, a level 15 skill gem and a Scouring Orb, vendoring those together will give you a level 14 at the same quality. Needs to be uncorrupted. If you use a Regret Orb instead of a Scour, it'll drop it down to level 1. This is useful if you accidentally overlevel Cast When Damage Taken or something supported by Cast When Damage Taken, or if you change around gear on your character and one of your secondary gems is no longer equipable because you remove a strength item or something like that. Also, yeah, there's the Gem Cutter Prism recipe where you take a level 20 skill gem and vendor it with a GCP and then get back a level 1 gem with 20 quality on it. So a bunch of different options there that I hadn't thought of. So those are all actually better than the one I thought of vendoring that stupid bit of stuff. Act bosses is straightforward. We all know what that one is, and you just need to kill the gatekeeper of the second half of the axe. There's also a later one for killing later act bosses. Vile side areas are found in 8% of story zones and also 8% of maps, so you'll have no trouble doing this. You just need to remember to do one. A lot of players skip them when they're leveling. That's certainly my usual practice as well, but it's something you can just go out of your way and do one, or you can wait till you get to maps and you'll get slightly juicier ones. Choosing an Ascendancy is a massive power milestone, and really this is the game. This is functioning as a tutorial here. This is the game teaching you a little bit about some of the different depths of options that exist, getting you to do things once only, and giving new players a bit of a sense, oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do while you're leveling. Complete an encounter at the Bestiary Blood Altar. That can be done in Act 2 and onwards, and will help you fix up your flasks if you need bleed immunity. And then defeat an Incursion Architect comes online in Act 7. You'll first meet Elva in Act 7, and again, it actually can be pretty difficult to beat an Incursion Architect when you get there, if your character's pretty weak, as they normally are during the acts. But that's fine. Keep practicing, you'll find Elva again, and you'll be able to do that. And there's a really good point from hashtag in chat there that you can always put a sacrifice fragment into the map device. So most fragments, sacrifice fragments for Atzuri, also much less usefully mortal fragments for Uber Atzuri. If you put them into the map device by themselves, they will generate a fragment, a Vile side area, that will be something you can just run and get yourself a little bit of a reward for your extra fragments. We have the use Sentinels one next. Now this one's interesting in that it requires you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 26 different Sentinel encounters here. We don't know how rare any of these are. We don't know if any individual one of these is rare. A bunch of them have the name Apex in them, and that sort of makes me think that these might be reasonably high level or something, but we'll find that out when we get to play around with this mechanic. A lot of these sorts of challenges that we just can't say anything about for the moment. We're going to find that one out when we get there. And next is defeat Act Bosses 2, which is pretty brutal. XXII is asking about one of the challenges later. We'll get to that when we come to it. What I believe is the hardest combat encounter that's ever been part of a challenge, which is the one that requires you to do something pretty crazy. Apex Sentinels are the yellow ones, someone's saying in chat. So there's the 3 different colours. And Cosmic Apex Sentinel just sounds impressive, so I just assumed that that was something that was going to be a high-level thing. Maybe it is, but it seems like from its positioning in the ordering of the challenges that these are not that hard to access. Also, some of these may only be able to be created by using the various vendor recipes, or not vendor recipes, the various power core recipes, so we'll have to experiment with that. Come back for this one for more details. Probably day 3 or 4 of the league. We'll have much more of a sense as to how the Sentinel stuff works. Okay, yeah, defeat Act Bosses 2. We all know what this is, and it's something I am curious. Would people be interested in guides to some of these bosses? It's something that I've never put together is like a guide to Katava or Depraved Trinity. There may be reasonably difficult fights when you're getting used to the game, but most of my audience tend to be veteran players, so we're sort of all confident with these fights, but they're no joke when you're new. So I'm just curious if people would be interested in a guide like that at some point. Leaving that aside, that's Act Bosses 2. You can't progress past the Act Bosses without doing them, so that one's just straight in your way. Defeat magic or rare monsters scares me, and that is because of one word. Effigy. Here you need to do all but 2 of the new Arch Nemesis monsters. So these are the monsters that we were creating in the Arch Nemesis League, and they're now just going to be found in maps. and then we're going to be working on them. We'll then be encountering these in maps at random. Some of them will probably require high tier. The problem with Effigy is that it is absolutely brutal. What the Effigy does is the monster will create a clone of your character, and any damage done to that character is reflected to you. It means that basically for a period of time you have to stop DPS, and it reflects all damage as well. It's not just hit damage, it's basically everything. Effigy is one of the most brutal things around, and I would say that you want to be really, really careful. So yeah, we've got to work out what's going on with that. I'm just trying to keep a bit of a sense as to what's going on in chat there. I will put a link into chat here. I have to link that sorry, I've got a couple of different windows open. There is the link to the challenges. Someone requested it in chat there, and we'll discuss that. But yeah, Effigy is going to just absolutely be a wrecking ball for people. So let's have a quick look through at the other things here. We've got Voidspawn of Abaxoth, which can be pretty scary after you've killed the monster. And I am assuming that a lot of the Pantheon touched ones are going to be pretty rare. Hopefully Effigy is rare. This is not every Arch Nemesis. This is just the scarier ones. This is going to take a little while, but you're going to get this through natural gameplay. I think that anyone that pushes themselves to level 90 and quad ascended will probably encounter all of these, unless a few of them are very much only available the top tier of content. A couple of questions in chat about whether if you're reflect immune, what's going to happen with Effigy. We don't know. Were these nerfed? We don't know yet. Helvete's asking, were these Arch Nemesis nerfed? What we know is that some of the stat multipliers that were present on the Arch Nemesis will be nerfed. So it's not going to be the case that a monster with 4 different Arch Nemesis encounters on it, it's not going to be, I think they have something like 50 times the hit points of a normal rare, but it'll be significant. Effigy creates a copy of your character, Nico, that will, if it takes damage from anything, that damage comes through to you as well. It turns on and off, and it's just really deadly. When it turns on, it will just kill you if you're not really careful. Hey, thanks LDC. Complete Breach Encounters is next. This is one a lot of people have been scared of. I do not think that this is nearly as scary as people are worried about. So you need to complete 100 breaches. That is something that's going to take a little bit of time, and a lot of these challenges from here onwards are not going to be things that you complete in a small number of play sessions. But 100 breaches is something that if you focus on it, you can do in 50 odd maps just by virtue of using Polished Scarabs. Defeating Chayula, who dreamt outside of its domain, sounds brutal, and it was very brutal when this challenge existed in the actual Breach League. It's not really anymore. So if we have a look at the Atlas, you'll see that there's a couple of really significant breach sections. Firstly, you have Zeshdula, which creates a 2% chance to have Zeshdula the open hand. So that's the first thing. But then secondly, there's Gatekeepers. Breaches in areas have 70% increased chance to contain a boss. And Chayula breach chance. Breaches in areas have 30% increased chance to belong to Chayula. What these let you do is bias the breaches that you're getting heavily towards getting Chayula, and also heavily towards having the Chayula encounter in it. You're probably going to need to do about 50 or 60 breaches with both of these allocated in order to get Chayula outside of its domain in your map, but then you'll be able to find that. Just going through all of the sorts of questions that are coming up here. So we are saying here, sorry, I've just had a bit of scrolling past it here. So we've got, yeah, there's going to be a few things. Empowered Elements are going to be brutal on to a lot of players. Empowered Elements and also Consecrator are going to be terrifying, but you can always run past a rare monster. There's nothing wrong to say that you have to fight the rare monster, every rare monster that you encounter, and you have to kill it. You can just fight it, realize, oh yeah, no, I don't think I want to fight this one anymore, and then you can just run off. And so that's, yeah, that's not as bad as it sounds. It is reasonably nasty, but not terrifying. And, oh yeah, someone's saying do the Feared. If you do the Feared, that should count as doing Chayula, as killing Chayula outside of its domain. So that's pretty solid if that's the case. Zeshdula, not that rare if you spec into it, but you do need to spec into it. You cannot encounter Zeshdula, the open hand, unless you have spec'd into it. Complete a Flawless Breachstone. The hardest part here is this is the combat encounter that's the most difficult in this one. And Flawless Breachstones are absolutely no joke. These are a really difficult fight, but you'll be able to do them if you take them seriously and do a lot of them. I do think that a lot of people will spec Breach briefly for this, but there's a lot of things in this that say spec this mechanic for a little while. Once you get this challenge, feel free to unspec it. I think there'll be a lot more variance in people's atlases as a result. JC is asking how you do Effigy on a minion build. Here, kind of pray. There is a potential it could get nerfed a bit. I kind of hope it does. I was not wanting to see Effigy go core. Effigy was very much a do this once ever in 3.18. So Possessed Rogue Exiles is interesting. You need to get a Torment Spirit into each of these Rogue Exiles. This is a lot of them. You've got to do all 34 encounters. However, whilst this sounds pretty nasty from an RNG perspective, it's not going to be, because there's a number of Atlas passives that will make this easier. So if we have a look, it's, I actually can't remember whether it's a Rogue Exile one or whether it's a Rogue Exile or whether it's a Torment one. But where do we have Torment? So we have this challenge. This one is not relevant. Rogue Exiles in areas have a 100% chance to be possessed by a tormented spirit. If you allocate Exiled Will, you will get this challenge done, and it won't take you all that long, especially if you also spec into Rogue Exiles. If you spec into Rogue Exiles as well, then you'll get, not that one, you'll have Royal Guard. Royal Guard and Exiled Will together, you'll definitely get it. Ruckus will also make it even faster. I think that the way to do this challenge is just simply to spec into Ruckus and Tormented Will for a little while, and then get rid of them after you've got everything that you need for it. And that one's not going to be too bad there. You should be able to get this maybe in 50 or 60 maps of having these two nodes allocated on your passive tree. And if you allocate this, that'll make it even better. There's also other stuff as well. You can, if you want to spec more into Rogue Exiles, you're free to do so, but I don't think you're going to need to. I think you'll get this one, and it'll be one of the easier ones. One thing to note is that some of these, especially Igna Phoenix, is no joke if she gets an AoE or cast speed oriented ghost in her. And also, Fabian Gaming is saying in chat that Precinct map, if that's on the Atlas, will also be pretty noticeable. Essence Encounters is next. This is one of the ones that is more RNG oriented in some ways, but I do think that this one is fairly doable. So firstly we have, let's leave the second one for last because we don't know everything about that yet. Defeat an essence monster that has 8 essences in an area level of 80 or higher. This is a brutal combat encounter. This requires specking into the mod that gives a 15% chance for 3 more mods, for 3 more essences. And this one is going to result in a lot of characters going splat. This is one of the things that people will often encounter. If the rare monster that's got the essences on it has anything that gives life regen, you will probably have to give up and walk away from that. And that is going to be something that's really, really, really savage. Next we have defeat an essence monster that has 2 of the following essences, and then it's the 4 corrupt ones. So here you're going to need to find something that has 2 out of Misery, Envy, Dread, and Scorn, and then corrupt it. This is a rare outcome, but it's not a staggeringly rare outcome now. I had this 2 or 3 times in the league. That was my experience in 3.17, and I was moderately heavily spec'd into Essence. Is Essence on the map device? If someone's saying in chat that Essence is on the map device, if that's correct, then yeah, that's going to make things a lot easier. An interesting comment in chat, though, that's I'm not going to use the Atlas passives I like because I have to use passives for challenges all the time, sadly. I think that what's being set up here is a world where we're going to be rotating around what we've got on the Atlas a lot. So we'll have something on, then we'll remove it because you want to then focus on a specific challenge. So it'll be on, off, on, off, on, off. I think that this also has crack open 150 essence monoliths, which is going to take some time, but really that this is about 125 maps with an essence focus on the tree. The one that I'm more concerned about here is defeat an essence monster which has at least 5 rare modifiers. Rare modifiers appear to be the Arch Nemesis mods. That's its new name for them. And these, by default, are only going to be 2, 3, or 4. I assume that what we have as the Nemesis mod, so Nemesis mod on maps is, Nemesis mod says currently 20 to 30% more rare monsters on the map, and also everything has a Nemesis mod. Every rare monster has a Nemesis mod. I'm assuming that's being changed to be every rare monster has one additional mod, in addition to having probably still 20 to 30% more rare monsters. That is probably going to be necessary in order to get this, because from what Chris Wilson said in the interview at the league announcement, it'll be 2 to 4 by default. So that's going to be pretty significant. Lastly, essences, it's being said in chat, and I really agree with this. Essences will be very profitable for early league especially, and stat essences will remain profitable as people get their hands on Crystallized Omniscience. So that means that people will probably want to be doing essences anyway. And so I think in 317's economy at least, essences were too good not to spec on the Atlas passive tree. I got sick of the essence encounters, but I felt they were always too good to unspec from. And I think people are going to be using those ones. Yeah, Tenki's saying in chat that thinks that Nemesis and Bloodlines will be rare monsters have a mod, magic monsters have a mod. We're both thinking along the same sorts of lines there. And also, yeah, comments about a lot of Orbs of Unmaking are going to be used this league. Whilst I think that's true, I do think also a lot of people will have their basic plan as to where they want their Atlas to be at endgame as well. So there's going to be less experimentation except for purposes of the challenges. So we will we'll definitely mess around with this. Apparently Chris Wilson has confirmed there are going to be 80 Arch Nemesis mods. Now there's not 80, I don't believe, currently. So there's a few being added to that. We'll have to mess around and see if there's any new ones that we don't know about yet. Next up we have the Assemble Sentinels one. Now here we've got Assemble a Sentinel using a power core, Assemble a Sentinel that can't be naturally obtained, assemble a rare sextant with 6 mods. I'm assuming that all of these are pretty common/uncommon outcomes when you use a power core. So the first one's going to be something you'll probably have done in Act 1. Assemble a Sentinel that can't be naturally obtained might be 10% or something like that, and rare Sentinel with 6 mods. Rares with 6 mods are usually 12%, so 1 in 12. So that's something that again shouldn't be too rare. Assemble a unique Sentinel might be a bit rarer. We're going to have to find out with that. I don't know if this is a nasty RNG challenge or not. I assume it's not a nasty one, but I assume it's not a trivial one either. But we're just going to have to find that one out. Hey, Juniper. Yeah, the rewards look pretty good, but you'll get a lot from the first 24. After that, you'll then pick up more of them if you can manage to get a lot further. 24 is the new 36. So if you've got 36 in the past, expect that getting 24 will be about the same difficulty, and that'll get you the Ophidian armor set, which is pretty cool. Domination Encounters is next. Complete each of the following targets while affected by the Covetous Shrine buff. So Covetous Shrines are something that don't exist normally. In order to get one of these, you need to spec into All That Glitters. Shrines in areas have a 10% chance to be a Covetous Shrine. You'll probably also need to lightly spec into shrines in general in order to get this, because you're going to need to increase the amount of Covetous Shrines that spawn. It's not enough just to have a chance to get one. You're probably going to need a couple dozen Covetous Shrines to complete this one. But kill a map boss with it. That shouldn't be too hard. All you need to do is just find the Covetous Shrine before the map boss, clear your way to the map boss, burst the map boss down if you need to, log out. So let's assume your character's weak here. If your character's strong, you don't need to do this. You can burst the boss down to 15% or so, then you can log out. Then at that point, run back to the Covetous Shrine, collect it, then go to the boss and kill the boss. The Covetous Shrine will last 45 seconds default, and you can extend that with a couple of items. From memory, the Gull helmet, I think that increases the duration of shrines. Maybe it's Blunderbore. So there's a bunch of things there. Breach boss in the wild, again, requires a little bit of specking into. You're definitely going to want to spec Gatekeepers, but if you do spec Gatekeepers, which you are already doing for the Breach challenges, then you're probably going to get this one more easily than you'll get the Chayula one. So spec into, basically you want to spec into simultaneously All That Glitters and Gatekeepers. Keep both spec'd until you have this part done, and then at that point you can unspec one of them if you need to. Atlas also has the shrine duration, someone's saying in chat there as well, so that's another option that you've got. Essence Monster should happen by accident with a Covetous Shrine. As long as you've got Covetous Shrines on your Atlas, you should have no trouble here. Metamorph should probably happen by accident or maybe with a little bit of effort. All you need really is just run Metamorph Scarabs, Rusted is enough, while you're mapping with Covetous Shrines. You can use Ambush Scarabs and Metamorph Scarabs at once, both Rusted tier. You should get that one just fine. Delirium Boss a little bit nastier, but when you're running 20% Delirious maps, you're about 40% to have Concise in your map, especially if you spec into Delirium layers on the map. So Delirium layers you would spec into by taking Delusions of Persecution, and if you do that, then you'll have a reasonable chance to encounter the Covetous Shrine buff, and then while you've got it, fight Concise. Or Concise being the harder one, Omniphobia. Omniphobia is the one that is in 20% Delirious maps. Just one thing that's of note, you will almost never get a Delirium Boss while you're using a Delirium Mirror. They do exist, but they're just much rarer than if you find them on a 20% Delirious map or above. Shaper or Elder Guardian, again, they're also a map boss, so you could do this at the same time as you do map boss, and just burst the boss down to 15%, log out, log back in, run to the Covetous Shrine, pick it up, then go kill the Shaper or Elder Guardian, and that's the easier way to do it. If your character's super powerful, you don't need to mess around with that. Yeah, it is true that there's almost nothing related to the master missions here. That's a good point. Metamorph Encounters comes next, and here you need to defeat a Metamorph which is comprised of 5 unique body parts. I don't know if Tane's laboratory ones will count for this. I'm going to take the worst case scenario and assume it doesn't, although the way that I read it, it should. So let's assume it doesn't. I've done the numbers so you don't have to. It is 720 in 7,776 that you'll get this by chance on a 6-boss map. So if you're running a 6-boss map, you'll need to get 1 lung, 1 heart, 1 eye, 1 brain, and 1 eye, I think. Did I say eye? One of each of the different things. That is going to happen a little bit more than 9% of the time that you'll be able to do this. So this is not hard. You do need to do a bunch of twinned 3-boss maps though in order to do this, and then you'll be able to pull it off. Alternately, Tane's Lab will do it. Defeating a Metamorph that has 5 different rare modifiers is scary because I don't know how rare this is. I don't have any idea how rare the rare mods are. We're just going to have to play around with that and find out. Defeat a Metamorph and a Rogue Metamorph within 5 seconds of one another is going to be something that's easiest done in a Tier 1 map. You're going to want to do a Tier 1 map, spec into Rogue Metamorphs, which do not appear by default. So let's just have a look for Metamorph. Rogue Metamorph is somewhere in here. It will be... can't remember where all... here it is, Escaped Experiment. So look for a Rogue Metamorph from Escaped Experiment. Once you've found it, clear most of the rest of the map, come back, build a Metamorph next to it, and you're in a Tier 1 map, the map is scoured, you can probably kill the Metamorphs in one shot. If you can't kill them in one shot, well, you've got 5 seconds anyway. So you should be able to do that just fine in a Tier 1 map. This is the sort of thing that a lot of people won't think of. This is the sort of thing that you can definitely do a challenge selling service on, and you'll be fine. And there's a couple of other ideas people have got in chat as well, like Torture Senpai is saying, put on Southbounds. So Southbound is a unique set of gloves that has the ability, that has the text that your hits cannot kill monsters unless there's some condition met. I think they have to be frozen. And if you're not capable of freezing, then this means that you can have a DOT effect, and that's the way that you kill monsters, but you just leave them alive at 1 hit point until you're ready to kill them both simultaneously. Tumblr is agreeing with me that these challenges are very hardcore unfriendly. I think that Tumblr is very right in that, and I think that we will see a real migration of players away from hardcore trade, and people that are looking for a harder mode of the core game will probably go to softcore solo self-found instead. Otherwise, people will either maybe there will still be some people that stick with hardcore trade, but I think it's going to be in a much worse state than usual. Okay, here we've got the Mongrel. There's no nice way to put it. Complete Harvest Encounters is an absolute brutal RNG fest. There are 3 challenges here that are extremely RNG heavy, and the 4th one is fairly RNG heavy. I don't think this will get done in solo self-found. Someone might get it by luck, but I don't think that it will be done. And the reason for that is that defeat a Harvest boss is rare. I encountered 2 Harvest bosses doing the challenge to do 300 crops in in Harvest this league, and most people I spoke to that did that challenge got one, or got about one. Some people got 0, but mostly it was 1 or 2. Secondly, Harvest the Heart of the Grove. Getting a Sacred Blossom is extremely rare. These are going to be 15 or 20 Exalts by the end of the league because they're just so rare. This is even with Harvest on the map device. Next, we have sacrifice a stack of at least 4 Divination cards and receive double that amount back. This is an uncommon result, but not a rare result, and the craft is uncommon, not rare. This one is the easy one of the 4. Finally, harvest at least 7 crops in a single Sacred Grove. Here you need 2 things. You need a combination of 3 factors here. You need a map that naturally has 4 crops in it. So that means, I think, tier 14 plus, although someone else can confirm that maybe. So tier 14 plus. Then you need to have the... You need to allocate the node. Here, harvesting areas have a 10% chance for the unchosen crop to not wilt. And you also need to have the bumper crop. So the bumper crop takes it from 4 to 5. Then you need 2 of these 10% chances to come online together. Now, let's just quickly do the maths on that. That would be exactly a 10% chance, actually, to get that. If you've got 5 crops, each one is a 10% chance. Getting 2 successes there should be exact. Getting exactly 2 is 10%, and you could also get 3, which is 1%. So 11% chance to get... 11% chance, and the chance of getting 4 or 5 is negligible. So yeah, you're looking at 11% in maps that have that. So actually that one's not too bad either. This one I was wrong on. I thought that this was rarer than it was, but now having done the numbers, you are 10% to get exactly 2, 1% to get exactly 3, 50% I think to get exactly 1, and 1 that doubles, and yeah, that seems... I have to reassess those numbers, but it's not as bad as I thought it was. The main thing, though, is just the rarity of Harvest Bosses and Heart of the Grove. This is a challenge that should not be on your pathway to 36 or even 38. This is something that you do 39th or 40th. Maybe you get lucky and you get it earlier. There are comments that, yeah, Harvest is on the map device, and there'll be a lot of strategies people will employ where they will farm Harvest aggressively in Trade League and will sell the crafts that they get on the Forbidden Trove Discord or other various competitors for that, like the Path of Exile Services Trading Discord. There'll be a bunch of that that'll happen, and that will help some people get there. But this one is particularly nasty. Ashton's asking in chat, 10% chance to get 6 and 1% for 7. The reason I believe it to be 10% to get 7 is that you can get 5 by default, and then from your 5, you have a 1% chance for any given pair of them to both be doubled. And there are 10 different pairs amongst 5. So you can have A and B, you can have A and C, A and D, A and E, B and C, B and D, and so on. So there's 10 different pairs. Each pair has a 1% chance. So that's why I think it's 10%. And also there's a chance of getting 3. So I do think that people will probably... people will need to get this themselves. I think harvest at least 7 crops in a single Sacred Grove. You'll need to get this yourself because you won't be able to sell it to people. They won't be able to get 7 crops in there. So yeah, the harvest stuff, this is nasty. I do think that a lot of people will spec harvest anyway because it's a very profitable strategy in Trade League. But this is absolutely brutal. And Kai is saying in chat that there is a node that grants a Blossom on boss kill as well. So that does help with getting the Sacred Blossom. The thing is, you've still got to find the boss. And the bosses are rare. Delirium Encounters is next. Defeat a map boss while delirious. This is done on a 20% delirious map is the easy way. The harder way, which I think most characters that are going for a lot of challenges here, especially for the later ones in this, will get this done anyway, is by using the Delirium Mirror. You should be able to do this. If you can't do this, then you're not going to have a chance at the later ones in here, because some of these are brutal. And next we have obtain at least 200 Simulacrum Splinters from a single Delirium Mirror. This is one that requires very heavy commitment to juicing. Delirium is on the map device, so you can spend your 16 Chaos to force Delirium Mirror to spawn. Then you will want to have the... You want to spec into... There's a thing for Delirium that's not that one, not the other one up there. It's down here. You want to spec into both Descent into Madness and also the Singular Eternity. The Singular Eternity gives you more time, and Descent into Madness is there to give you more Delirium in the map. Once you've done that, you'll then want to run quad scarab maps, and you'll want to run maps with long linear layouts. Tropical Island has historically been considered the best of these, and then there's also other options. Davi in chat is saying that you can put 3 influences now, which is definitely true. So you could use Elder Influence via an Elder Scarab. You could use a map that is inherently a Conqueror of the Elder map. And you can also use Searing Exarch or Eater of Worlds influence. The main thing is you want to get a long way away from the Delirium Mirror quickly, killing everything in the map. And then at the other end, you want to kill every single monster that's there. Once you've done that, you'll be fine. It is the case, yeah, Legend Dusty is asking, you can't get influenced items below monster level 81 anymore. That is, I believe, correct, with the exception of items that are sourced from divination cards. Divination cards will be able to give item level 80 stuff and lower as well from that are still influenced. But I don't think that they will drop below 81 anymore. So 200 Splinters from a single Delirium Mirror. My opinion on this one is that most people with a very powerful character will be able to do this within their first 10 tries at it. But it's going to be something that's very, very, very late in your progression. You're going to need to get a long way into mapping. Create a 100% Delirious Tier 16 map with at least 4 modifiers. 100% Delirium means that monsters do 30% more damage to you. They have 96% damage reduction, which means that they have essentially 25 times base hit points. And 4 modifiers means that you can't just cheese this with the easiest possible map mods. You'll have to have some genuine map mods in there. I do think, again, whilst this is no joke, and you're going to have to deal with a 300 million effective hit point boss, it still is something that is quite a bit easier than the next one. Complete Wave 30 of the Simulacrum. This is no joke. In terms of maps, I would suggest for getting 200 Splinters, chat's saying many similar things, but Strand, Promenade, Tropical Island, Beach. Actually, Beach is off the map, Atlas this time, I think. And there's a bunch of others as well. If you are looking, though, for a map that you can do with this on, you can always pick up one of my divination card, the Price of Prescience, a set of 5 of them. Don't actually know where that drops. If anyone's had this as a natural drop, let me know. But the Price of Prescience card will give you a 100% Delirious Vile Temple map, which is always a little bit of fun to do at the end of a league when your character's super strong. This is one of the hardest map bosses, other than maybe Bramble Valley. I think Bramble Valley has the... Bramble Valley, Forbidden Woods, and Vile Temple are probably the hardest map bosses around. Also, I would say that Vile Temple... So, there's Vile Temple and there's Vile Pyramid. Vile Pyramid would also be very difficult to beat while 100% Delirious. User Recombinators is next. This one we can't predict how hard this is going to be because we don't know how rare Recombinators will be. Recombinators are one of the new things that are being added in the league that are an extremely high-end endgame crafting method, and I feel that they will be, because they strike me as powerful as an Awakener's Orb, albeit more RNG than an Awakener's Orb in their use. I think they will be very, very, very rare. Nico is asking about influenced items. Can the items be lower than 81? Yes, they can. It just seems that you're not going to get them until level 81 content. So if you were, say, in the Delve Mines, there's a chest called Eldritch Jewelry that will drop an Elder Influence piece of jewelry. That chest probably won't appear at all. I believe it probably just won't be able to appear until the zone's monster level is at least 81. We'll have to check that one out to be certain. So this one is 4 different... You need to use 4 different recombinators. Combining a corrupted item with a synthesis implicit mod should be pretty easy to do. 6-link with an enchanted item is being changed. Combine an item with a fractured mod and an item that's been split. So you need to have a beast split, and you'll find plenty of fractured mods from various other sources, fractured items, and an influenced item with an item that has an abyssal socket. This last one might require you to use a hollow fossil on an influenced item. It is currently believed that you can only use a recombinator on influenced items if the influences on both items match exactly. So if you have a Hunter and Shaper influenced ring, then the only other thing that you can put with it is another Hunter and Shaper influenced ring. So we're going to have to see exactly how this works. But like I said, I think the way Recombinators work is it's an Awakener's Orb, except it treats everything on the item as being an influence mod. And so it'll pick one from each of the items, smash them together, add additional mods onto it. I could be wrong on that. That's just my interpretation from what we've seen so far. Could you use Stygian Vice for it? Excellent point. 2 people in chat have asked that, and they're right. Yep, you folks are right. You could combine an influenced item with a Stygian Vice. The Stygian Vice, however, would need to be influenced because it would need to match the influence on the other item. An interesting question that's just been asked is what's going to come up with Simulacrum and the new Arch Nemesis mods, and how is that going to affect rare monsters that are found in the Simulacrum? Because you're 100% delirious from waves 20 through 30, so that means that individual rare monsters are 25 times base hit points, and so they can be really tanky. I think that's an interesting question we're going to have to play around with, because you'll probably encounter more and more Arch Nemesis monsters the deeper in Simulacrum you go. And that's going to be something, yeah, I think we'll see a bunch of high-profile hardcore deaths that will happen to people who are experimenting with these, not so much experimenting, people who are caught off guard by the new mods. Artisan is asking, is it confirmed both items need to have the same influence? And that's what Chris Wilson said in the Q&A session, but that could be either, Chris could be wrong, or it may not have been certain at the time how it was going to work. We'll find out on that. I'm just going to assume that. So Amit has run the numbers properly. The probability is actually 0.86%, you're saying, of getting 2 additional crops or more in 5 crops. I don't think that's... Let me run the numbers. Let me come back with the numbers once I actually test it. In fact, let's just bring up a binomial distribution calculator. Sorry about the flashbang. And there'll be another one right now. Let's just stop thinking about it. It's just 0.1, number of trials is 5, number of successes required is 2, calculate. Probability of exactly equal is 7.29%. Cumulative probability that you get at least 2 is 8.146%. There you go. Sorry about the flashbang all, but 8.146%. Okay, so let's just have a quick look-see here at what's going on. Fabian asks, is there a sextant for +1 crop in Harvest? That would change things a lot if there is. I will check that, POEDB, and we'll just go to sextants. And I think you can, I'm trying to remember how to find this on POEDB. It's Atlas Sextant. Where are we? Sextant mods. Harvest. So we have the... There is not a +1. There is not a +1 crop. Yeah. Antonio's saying that people who are running in the race that GGG are running, there'll be a lot of high-profile deaths to Arch Nemesis monsters, which I think is definitely going to be the case. Yeah, you're correct that the auras, like aura stacking on from monsters, won't be a case anymore. That's going to be a big factor in Heist as well. Next up we have use Eldritch Altars in the following ways. Now, Wrath of the Cosmos and Eldritch Gaze, I haven't yet made a video on Wrath of the Cosmos. It's something I was planning to do at some point today. Wrath of the Cosmos is a new mod that's being added that is, in fact, let's just bring it up in the background while people are looking at it. Wrath of the Cosmos is going to say, is really quite nasty. Eldritch currency items found have a 25% chance to be duplicated for each Eldritch Altar used in the area. That's a big deal. Players take 25% increased damage for each Eldritch Altar used in the area. That is just savage. That is sadistic and evil and horrible and nasty. And it's going to mean that you're going to have to be very careful about how many of these you take. However, 25% chance for lesser and greater Eldritch currency items to drop as grand Eldritch currency items instead for each Eldritch Altar used in the area. That's also a big deal. This is really significant. And one thing that I noticed with Wrath of the Cosmos is that this does not seem to be Searing Exarch specific. This seems to be something that applies to both sides. So we're going to have to keep that one in mind. But that is going to be very deadly. 250 altars with Wrath of the Cosmos allocated is going to just result in a lot of deaths. And I think that you might want to do this when you're level 93 or so, or alternately when you're level 100. I don't think you want to do this while you're level 96 trying to get to 97. And then we've got 250 Eater of Worlds Altars with Eldritch Gaze is another one that's there. So very similar. These are both very nasty and are going to just get a lot of people killed. 250 Altars is probably going to be about 90 maps maybe? I think, I'm not really sure. Antonio is suggesting that in hardcore you do these after the map is cleared. I think you're right. I think that is very true. And the tier 16 map boss in a rare map after having completed at least 6 Searing Exarch Altars in an area with Roth of the Cosmos allocated, the way that you do that is you make a 0 mod rare map. With a very easy boss. You find a map that has a very easy boss, one that you can tightly control with Decoy Totem, and then you do this with Searing Exarch Altars. Like so you annul off the mods on the map, or alternately you just transmute Regal into 2 trivial mods. And then at that point you go, do I have 6 altars? Yes. Okay, great, we can do this. Now we're going to go and tap all the altars very carefully. Then we're going to do the boss while it is locked down with a Decoy Totem. Similar thing for the other one. This is 4 Eater of Worlds Altars that have modifiers that affect the boss. With Eldritch Gaze allocated is no joke either. And that's how you'll do them. Someone else is suggesting you get the boss really low and activate all the altars. That's an option too. I don't know how the altars work, whether they refill the health on a boss or not, but it is definitely a good idea that's worth trying. Someone should test that in softcore so that our hardcore friends know whether that's an option or not. Of course, you need to be able to exit the boss's arena to do that, although you can always just get the boss to 5%, then log out, and then come back in with Culling Strike. How are you going to get to 6 altars with no pack size? It seems like it's RNG. That's been my experience. Like, yes, you do increase the number of altars when you've got a lot of pack size on a map, but I do think you'll get there, especially if you transmute Regal. You transmute Regal something easy. And someone's also mentioning the option of Immortal Shrine. You will sometimes get a Divine Shrine in a map. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. And that's another solution. I actually quite like that one. Next we have Sheer Arrogance. This is the hardest combat encounter that Path of Exile has ever had as a challenge, with the possible exception of doing Uber Atzeri for a challenge when she was brand new. And this one is absolutely bonkers. You need to complete each of the following invitations while they're rare, with mod count 5 or higher, and while you have Height of Hubris allocated. So Height of Hubris, if you're not familiar with this one, is the thing that doubles the effect of everything on your... doubles the effect of everything when it comes to the modifiers on your invitations. So it doubles the quantity bonus, and it also doubles the actual numerical effect of the mod. Because it's got to be at least 5 mods, you can't fish just to have easy mods, or ones that don't double. You can probably get a few of these as mods that don't double, like Temporal Chains, but this is just absolutely nasty. We'll have to see exactly how this works. Someone also has made a really good suggestion for the altars one here, that a unique Sentinel might help, and there is the Basilisk Sentinel. So Basilisk Sentinel might help with these ones. So something that's really nasty on this is that not only do you need to do the 4 new bosses, not only do you need to do the Formed, the Twisted, and the Forgotten, but you need to do the 3 hard invitations. You need to do the Hidden, the Feared, and the Elder Slayers. So the Feared and the Elder Slayers and the Hidden are definitely the 3 of these that are the hardest by far. They're going to have essentially 10 mods on them. And yeah, this is going to be one. If you've got a character that can carry this, you are going to make a lot of currency in softcore trade. If you can just go, all right, I can complete your Feared with 5 mods and Height of Hubris, you will definitely be able to make yourself a lot of currency with this. Let me just confirm on that with, again, this POEDB quickly on the map mods. I don't think that the maps for the map mods anymore do that, but I will just confirm that. So we're going to the Atlas maps top tier. No, it's not maps anymore, it's invitations. So invitation, Maven's invitation, and we have... It's just flat players are cursed with Temporal Chains. So there's no players are cursed with Temporal Chains with plus 30% effect anymore. That was something that used to be in the game until the last rework they did of curses. So you'll just get the single version of Temporal Chains curse on you with no augmentation to the numbers. Yeah, I think Killian, I think that Solo Self-Found is going to be very hard to get 40 challenges in this league. Very hard. Same as Hardcore is going to be very hard. Next, we actually have what I think is a decrease in difficulty by quite a bit. This is do all of the various Uber Duber bosses. So, Shaper Enhanced. Chris said that they were going for the same difficulty as the Feared with most of these. And presumably Uber Elder might be a little bit harder. So, Shaper, Cortex, and at level 85 are probably going to be quite difficult, but not as hard as the Feared with 5 doubled mods. There has been no replacement for all release. And there's also a question, can you find a combination of 5 mods that's decent? Yes, you can, but it's not going to be often. You'll find a bunch of these, but there'll be not all that many of those ones. Momo's saying that this is aimed at 1% of players or whatever. I think you underestimate how good the average player is in Path of Exile nowadays. I think the days when the player base were terrible at the game are long gone. By day one, by the end of day 2, there'll be 25,000 level 92 plus characters. That's been what's been happening in recent leagues, and the highest concurrent player base you ever see is 280,000. So you're looking at like not 8% of the player base, but 8% of the top peak concurrent players are already level 92 by the end of day 2, and those players are probably almost all Shaper capable. Maybe not Shaper capable on day 2, but they'll be Shaper capable day 5, and then there'll be a much bigger group of people that get Shaper capable over the period of the league. And yeah, I think it's just factually no longer true that 1% of the player base gets to maps. Like, you can tell that by how many players get to maps on day 1. That is like, there's a number of things that people have seen from Steam achievements, you know, where Steam achievements make it look really bad, like make the player base look really terrible at the game. But that includes people that download the game and play for 3 minutes and decide, you know what, this isn't fun. I'm not having fun. I'm not going to keep playing this. You know, like, that's me with a bunch of games I've got in Steam that I've played a very small amount of time in, and then just decided, yeah, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have bought that. Not for me. And those players get counted in those stats. Really, if you filter it to only count the people who stick with the game long enough to get through like Act 6 or 7, then at that point you'll find there's a lot more people. And yeah, 40 challenges is for the masochist. 40 challenges is for the absolutely is for the masochistic. I think that if people are still having fun after 2 or 3 hours in the game, maybe, you know, I think your first time is going to take you 2 or 3 hours to get through Act 1. If you're still having fun after that, and you're still having fun 5 or 10 hours later when you clear Act 3, then at that point you're probably going to make it to maps. You'll make it slower than a veteran will, but you'll probably get there. And yeah, you see, and also, yeah, Eric's pointing out people that download it on a PC that can't run it, which my old PC, I remember, couldn't run Path of Exile at all, and I did download it on it. When I first heard of the game, I downloaded it and realised, yeah, I can't play this. I did the same with EVE Online as well. There is some of these content that is going to be beyond most players, and that's fine. Like, I know that when Uber Atsuri was added, I was your typical early endgame player, your typical early endgame genuinely bad player then. I was unable to beat normal Atsuri's twinned oversouls. That's the furthest I got in there. And I saw that added Uber Atsuri, and I was like, oh, cool. This is just something else that if I decide that I want to get better at this game, this is something else to work towards. And that was my attitude when I couldn't beat the twinned oversouls in Atsuri. I looked up all the information about it. It was just that I didn't have enough DPS to trivialize the fight, and I didn't have the technical skill to dodge the beams long enough to kill them. Eventually, I got better, and eventually I got to the point that I could beat that fight, beat the trio in a couple of attempts, and then finally got Atsuri down herself a couple of leagues later. And then over time, I got better at the game, and that's what happens with a lot of people. Going for 6 or 12 challenges is where I think someone that's a more casual player can get to, and they'll get some decent stuff for that. Then they can possibly get carries, maybe even to push them to 24, and then, you know, you'll be able to get more if you want to. If you decide you want to get better, then you will. Yeah, Uber Atsuri was really expensive to try back then as well. Even normal Atsuri, because there's a bias against getting Sacrifice at midnight that everyone notices. It's 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. I think it's 40% is dawn, 30% is dusk, 20% is noon, 10% midnight. But that used to be a much stricter bias. I think it used to be 1 in 20 that it was midnight. And so even normal Atsuri was quite rare. And all the divination cards for Mortal Hope didn't exist. So the way that Mortal Ignorance is the bottleneck now, Mortal Hope was always twice as rare as Ignorance, and still is for that matter. Mortal Hope is twice as rare as Ignorance. It's just that there's a div card for it. And yeah, someone's saying, I think this is true, there'll be a bunch of carries, like at least for stuff like Cosmic Wounds and Memento Mori, there'll be a lot of people who are desperate to build up vouchers on Forbidden Trove or other trade discords, and they will be they'll be doing carries on these. Maybe not free, but very cheap, like way cheaper than is a fair price. Yeah, Midnight felt really rare back then. You also couldn't run your excess dusks. You could do nothing with them in patch 1.1. It was crazy. Like you'd end up with I think you ended up with 10 dusks for every Midnight, and you could do nothing with these dusks. They were just complete bricks. Then they added the ability to use them as an extra stacking chisel, which still exists, and then they made the ability to run them as a zone. And then after that, okay, so we've got the 2 hard bosses. I think that these will be on people's path to 24 challenges. Maybe doing them themselves, but maybe giving up after 3 failed attempts and getting a challenge carry for them. Powering the Sentinels is next. Now, powering up all 3 Sentinel slots seems like it's the easier one. Reaching 30 power units is this league's equivalent of, like, there's always a grind the new content. There's always a grind the new content challenge. This is this league's equivalent of get 63 on the Crangulator, like fully unveil all of the Crangulator stuff. But I think this one, judging by its position in the chat list, not in the chat list, in the challenge list, I'm assuming that this is pretty doable, and that this is the sort of thing that you might hit through natural gameplay using Sentinel occasionally, level 91, 92, 93. That's where I think you'll get this, but we will see on this one. DJ Danny, I'm with Snipe on this. The Harvest one is the one that you are going to have a lot of trouble with. The Harvest one is the one truly nasty RNG one on this. Absolutely brutal, the Harvest one. Was looking at it before, all of the parts of it are brutal. Complete all the following unique maps. Note that you have to do Doriani's Machinarium this time. You have to do the Vinctar Square, and you do not seem to have to do the Hall of the Grandmasters. So no Hall of the Grandmasters is a good thing, but otherwise this is basically the same as getting 117 this league. Machinarium will be moderately expensive again because of this, and so will be the Vinctar Square. It's pretty common. It's just that it's such a pain to put together. This one is going to be much more easily done if you spec into the node on the passive tree for comprehensive scouting reports. Exactly the same thing that I recommended to people who wanted to do the challenge for Kirax Vault this league to get 117. Specking into those comprehensive scouting reports made it much more common to get Doriani's Machinarium. They're not common, but they're not rare either. Perfect Storm, Cirrus 85. Again, this is one where you will want to try the fight 3 or 4 times yourself. If you feel like you're close, then keep trying. And if you just fail miserably every time, then seek out a challenge support there. Cosmic Wounds the Elder is the Elder in Shaper's Realm, which I assume is the Uber Elder encounter, actually. I think that's the Uber Elder encounter. And that one seems like it could be pretty difficult from what we've seen of the footage of it. There's a bullet hell that goes off while you are being attacked by other things and without Zana's protective bubble. So that looks really nasty. Maven Uber could also be very difficult. Both of these are very late in the challenge list as well, which makes them seem scarier. I do not believe you need to harvest a Sharby yourself. Sniper's asking, this question has been asked a few times. Harvest the Heart of the Grove was the exact wording that was used in the last league that had this challenge, and it was just be present when she dies. It wasn't anything more. You just need to be present when at the moment that a Sharby dies in an instance. You don't need to have created the instance. You don't need to be the one player that gets it. That's assuming it works the same as the last time, but the last time had exactly the same wording. So I'm reasonably confident that that is what it's going to be. You can also trade for the Blossom, and you can then also probably run a service for it as well. The difficult parts are going to be the ones that you can't really trade in that. So defeat the following encounters when they're empowered by a Sentinel. This one's interesting. Defeat a map boss while it has at least 50 empowerment. We don't know how hard it's going to be to get 50 empowerment. I'm assuming that this is going to require a specific combination of magic mods on a Sentinel. It's not going to be the default stat. And we also don't know how hard that fight is going to be. So this is going to be one that we can't really comment further on, except to say that it is potentially pretty nasty. Thirst for Knowledge is next. Uber Searing Exarch. This looks like there's a pretty crazy phase in it. So the Thirst for Knowledge fight, we saw video footage of this fight. The Bullet Hell phase that is part of the Searing Exarch encounter, it seems like you have to destroy a monster of some description in the middle of that in order to progress the fight onwards. So it's not just a case of dodging all of the balls. You also have to kill something while you're dodging them, and the balls seem to be more intense than usual. So this one looks like it's pretty crazy. And yeah, Dan's got a good point there that there's a bunch of discussion about farming Harvest for Trade League players online that is really useful because Harvest is very lucrative. Like, I've started making a guide on various obscure Harvest crafts that people often roll over and their uses. And so there's that. There's the ultra rare crafts that everyone knows is valuable. But then there's the things that are just quite common that are valuable. And if you're doing that, you can make a lot of currency while you're trying to farm that. And you can easily sustain 12 chaos a map in order to just keep funding your harvest as well. I don't expect that Ice Wall will break the balls in that fight. I think they fixed that, didn't they, in the middle of 3.17? I thought 3.17.2 was doing that. Yeah, Rishab, we're going to go through all the challenges. You can rewind. On YouTube, you can rewind a live stream, and you can play it at 125, 150% until you catch up if you want. Although I don't know that you'll catch up while we're still going. I haven't yet decided how long we're going to keep going, but you can do that. And this will also be available as a normal video, maybe the instant it's finished, but otherwise after. Are they grindy or difficult? Both. There are representatives of both. There are grindy challenges, there are difficult challenges, and there is one RNG Nightmare challenge. So we have Insatiable Appetite is also another one of the hard mode bosses. Again, I think that these seem like they're going to be reasonably tough, but we've got to play the encounters and find out. One of the things here is that beating the normal version of this, so the level 83 version, is something that's intended to be a challenge for players that are in the middle of endgame gearing, whereas these Uber versions are for someone that's right at the top end of gearing. And I think that you'll find that a lot of players, they beat the Eater of Worlds early in their progression, and then they progress to be a lot stronger, and then at that point they can probably take on the Uber version. The RNG challenge is the Harvest one. Atlas Grinds is next. Activate 1,000 of each type of altar. That's going to take some time. Defeat 200 witnessed map bosses. That's going to take some time. This one is a really significant and long encounter, and it's something that if you are going to go for 40 challenges, you should start on this immediately. If your goal is to go for 36 or 38 challenges, this might be one of the ones you leave out, but it's probably one you want to start with in case one of them is unexpectedly hard. We know Harvest is going to be nightmarish. We know Endgame Grinds is going to be long. This one is also like Endgame Grinds. It's going to be a big one. And it'll take a lot of time to do, and you're probably going to want to start on this from day one. As soon as you get into tier 14 maps, start working on this. Once you've finished Exarch, work on Eater, or vice versa, whichever way you prefer. And then at some point, 200 witness map bosses. I think the quickest way to do that will be in maps like City Square. I assume that City Square will count 6 times, although I'm not sure on that. This one will be long, 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 long. Comment that's been made by Tendy in chat, I assume normal bosses will not be profitable when people will run the Uber version of them and they use the same access keys. I think that this league, so 317, Shaper, everyone slept on. I made a video on it that didn't get all that much traction, but basically every run of the Shaper was 50 chaos profit just from the Uber Elder fragment, and also you had a few % chance to get a Maven's Orb from it. And like I got 2 Maven's Orbs when I was farming Shaper myself. So that was something that would really end up being a huge boost when you got it. Now this league, there's going to be another use for the Shaper fragments, but there's still, the Shaper is probably going to be the one that's going to be the most lucrative still. People don't like running normal Shaper, and whilst people might find that the Uber Shaper might take too long or might be too hard, I still think there'll be people running the normal Shaper. In terms of so just going through all the other discussion that's coming up here, the Perfect Storm is the one that's going, so Perfect Storm challenge is the one to beat Uber version of Cirrus. Cirrus will have seems like he'll have one of his storms, a very small one in the middle of the arena, which is going to make the fight harder. I would recommend a bossing character, yes. Maybe not as your first character. Start with whatever you want, but you can then set up a second character later to be a bosser, or you can do it the other way around. You're probably going to want 2 characters in this league, one of which is good for clear speed, so that you can do things like Atlas Grinds and maybe even Endgame Grinds, and the other one of which is something that is very much more focused on being a boss killer, so that you can do things like Simulacrum 30. Defeat the Shaper conditionally. Here we go with the fun stuff. These are pretty crazy and really, really, really interesting versions on some of these fights. Defeat the Shaper while a Maven is witnessing the encounter. Maven makes the Shaper so much harder. So much so that most players' advice, and I agree with this, is that if you're preparing for the Feared, it is actually easier to do Uber Elder while witnessed and have the Uber Elder witness encounter rather than doing the Maven Witness Shaper. Maven Witness Elder is really easy, but Maven Witness Shaper is brutal, and that's because the clones can go off while you're dodging bullet hell. Absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. So defeating the Shaper while a Maven was witnessing the encounter is going to be nasty, but it's something that people can do. It's certainly not undoable, it's just something that is going to put up a real fight. Without being affected by the Shaper's beam, this usually takes a couple of tries. The Shaper's beam isn't instantly fatal, but it is pretty harsh. The quicker you can do the fight, the easier this will be. Without detonating any volatile anomalies, these are the balls on the ground. This makes the fight a lot harder, and it is a lot harder if the fight goes long. So you need to let the balls chase you around, keep running them around in loops, and this is much harder to do on hardcore than it is on softcore. In hardcore, you're going to do a lot less damage, and also you are going to need to be dodging every single slam. In softcore, who cares if you get slammed? You haven't failed the encounter, you've just died. You can come back in and just continue to avoid detonating the volatile anomalies. In hardcore, you have to dodge multiple things. You have to dodge the anomalies and you have to dodge the slam at the same time, and that makes it a lot harder there. While you and the Shaper are both killed, defeat it while you and the Shaper are both chilled is something that is pretty tricky to do, but there's a lot of builds that have self-chill effects and can inflict chill on enemies. If there was a really interesting build that was put out by streamer Pelster on a couple of leagues ago, and that was something definitely worth having a look at for doing that. Alternately, you can inflict chill on yourself via a number of means, or you can just let the Shaper do it to you. The Shaper's hits that chill low, they tend to be pretty deadly. The ones that chill are the balls, and they hit for a lot of damage. So you probably don't want to be donked by them very, very often. You want to be pretty careful with that. So I would say the easiest way is to have permanent chill on your character. And yes, the ring that was designed by Ben/Lighty is ideal for this, as it's something that will cause you to be chilled all the time, or almost all the time, and cause the Shaper to be chilled as well. So, and that drops, I believe, from the Uber Shaper, I think. Fulcrum as well, lots of different things. Someone's saying in chat, volatile anomaly ground effect chills as well. So if you're doing cold damage and you can do damage from a range, you can just jump into that chilling ground effect and nuke the Shaper down from that. So lots of different options there. Lots of ways you can do that. And it's something, though, that what I think GGG are going for here is that this is a challenge that you need to actively do yourself because you need to be chilled. Encounters 2 requires doing a bunch of different stuff. 8 mod Blight Ravage map is going to be very difficult encounter unless there's been meaningful nerfs to the... Well, sorry, there's a cheesy strategy for this. If that cheesy strategy has been nerfed, then this is a difficult encounter. 8 mod Blight Ravage maps require you to basically control the monsters aggressively using cold towers that are level 3 and physical towers that are level 3 while they're affected by a empowering tower, which is the green tower at level 3. That will create a zone that monsters can't really pass through, and then you can kill them at your leisure. But it's not completely at your leisure, because if they build up too many of them, then they will body push each other through. So for that reason, Blight Ravage maps, you do need some ability to counterattack the monsters. This one's going to be tough because those monsters are very, very durable. The best way to do this is to have some sort of scaling based upon monster life. If you have a skill that does its damage scaled based on monster life, such as Detonate Dead, and especially the Ignite versions of Detonate Dead, then you will absolutely obliterate these monsters when they start, when you've got them all bunched up like that. And that is probably the easiest way to do this challenge. Next up, we have an Expedition unique boss in an area level of 81 or higher. This league, you needed to do this, except it was Olroth specifically. Olroth being probably the hardest of them. This will be very easy to do with Medved and Varana. Just don't put up that much of a fight, especially if you make a beeline to them. And so I think this one's pretty easy. They're in about 10% of maps. Not 10% of maps, 10% of expeditions. So farm 10 logbooks and you're fine. Now this one is tricky. Defeat at least 10 unique bosses in the domain of timeless conflict with at least 4 unrelenting emblems. Unrelenting emblems make things a lot harder. And also, the old school strategies for the domain of timeless conflict are probably dead with the Headhunter changes. Or not the Headhunter changes, but the changes to Arch Nemesis monsters, mods replacing the old stacking rare monster mods. So for that reason, domain of timeless conflict has gotten a lot harder than it used to be. And doing it with 4 emblems is 4 unrelenting emblems is brutal. You only need to get 10 bosses, so that should be doable on most balanced builds. It's not something that requires a dedicated boss killer. But the best strategy I'll have for this one is simple. Don't use a Maraketh emblem. Use the other 4, and just simply do not use a Maraketh emblem. So use the other 4 as unrelenting, or actually Val emblem might be the one you want to leave out, because Val adds the most difficulty. So you can definitely do this, and that will be something that is really strong. Yeah, people are saying, and people are raising different options for doing damage. So there's a good point that's been raised in chat that you can also add in media towers to stun as well. And that the best way is just having multiple sources of these sorts of crowd control. As long as you're covering every lane in with at least 1 cold and at least 1 physical tower that are enhanced by a level 3 empower tower and also by ring enchants, you'll be fine. You'll be able to stop everything completely. But you will want to be killing things, and the media towers are good at both killing and stunning at the same time. You do need to be very careful on the mods, and a very good comment in chat that you make sure that you don't have the mod that stops monsters being slowed below base movement speed. That one you pretty much can't beat unless you've got extraordinary damage, both extraordinary single target damage and extraordinary damage projection, which is very hard to do. My personal favourite tower for clearing up packs in these is the Lightning Tower raised to tier 4 Arc, as that just does a fair bit of damage, it inflicts a really meaningful shock, and it just kills the weak enemies instantly, and as a result then you have lots of time before the stronger ones bunch up in numbers, and the Arc Towers can take them down at that point. You also need to kill all the Crystal King. A lot of people are concerned that all is overly rare. He's not really. He is rare, but he's not staggeringly rare, and I think that this is in the medium tier of RNG challenges now. All was made a lot more common recently, and also players just get deeper in Delve than they used to. And this is something that will be very easy to buy from other players as well. However, the hard part with all is actually the fight itself. All is difficult to practice against because you can only really practice against him in your own minds, and you can't really practice against him on your schedule very well. So that's something that does make the fight a little bit harder to get done. Yeah, Zed in chat is saying, got 7 alls in Delve that haven't done this league. Why don't you go and do them for some practice? That's my recommendation to you. Just go and have some practice with the fight. See if you can get there. Doesn't need to be in your delve area. It can be in someone else's delve area, the way it's worded. So yeah, I think you'll have no trouble acquiring the access to the fight. It's more that it's just not super... it's just that it takes a little bit of investment into delve. You probably won't find him before depth 300, but after getting about 350, you won't get there. Question's been raised, what about doing it with only 3 emblems? You need 4 Unrelenting emblems socketed in order to get the challenge, yeah. So you've got to do it on a fairly hard mode. It's not like the 3.17 challenge to defeat 100 factions, which I didn't do, but it was one of the viable options for Atlas Boons of the Atlas 3. I didn't do that one, but it was an option. All is fairly nasty mechanically. All is fairly nasty mechanically, yeah. I wouldn't say it's an easy fight. If you do know the fight well, though, you can definitely do a carry service for this encounter, and you will definitely get buyers, because people will try all. All is a boss that people generally can't beat without a guide and without a bit of investment of time into it. Defeat the Black Star conditionally is next. So we have, while the area has at least 80% item quantity. The easiest way to do this, and there's a few of these 80% quantity ones, is going to be to roll an easy set of mods that add up to 40%, and then use Height of Hubris to double that. Height of Hubris does make them a lot harder, but there are a number of mods that are not that hard, and so you can get 40% quantity and then use Height of Hubris to double it, and that'll be the way to go, I think, on that front. Next up we have, without gaining more than 5 stacks of Crushing Darkness or Annihilation. These things are so hard from here. Ultimately, the easiest way to do the rest of these is going to be through extreme burst DPS. Black Star is one of those bosses that the longer you're in the arena, the more dangerous everything becomes. So without gaining more than 5 stacks of Crushing Darkness or Annihilating Light means you need to stay close to the center of... need to stay close to the Terminator, the line between the two types of sides of the fight, and you really want the Black Star dead in seconds for this to work. So you want to stay close to the center. You want to be attuned to cold for a little bit, then attuned to fire, then back and forth. You want to be sort of bouncing between the two. And then you want to kill the boss really quickly so that you don't have to keep that up for very long. This is a DPS check and a skill and a mechanical skill check. It is both at once. It is definitely not trivial at all. This one will be quite difficult, and it'll also be quite difficult to do any sort of challenge service for as well. Next, while you have at least 30 stacks of Annihilating Light and without gaining any stacks of Crushing Darkness. So you need to stay attuned to fire the whole time. And again, you're going to want extreme burst damage. This is going to be all about killing the Black Star 1 second after you hit 30 stacks of Annihilating Light. You are going to need to hide from her fire laser behind the fire pillars. So the pillars need to be attuned to fire. You need to hide behind them when they go off. You'll probably only need to do this once. And then at that point, you will then have the fight done with 30 stacks of Annihilating Light without gaining any Crushing Darkness. It's doable, but it's going to be hard. Crushing Darkness is the opposite. You're doing that, but you've got to dodge the Astral Avalanche, and you have to dodge that whilst you're on the cold side. That one's going to be tricky. And so that's pretty nasty there. Infinite Hunger conditionally is probably one of the hardest. So this is the Yargle one. You got to defeat him with 80% quantity. That shouldn't be too bad. Without being vomited on, I think is also pretty easy, especially if you use Decoy Totem to control what direction the Infinite Hunger is pointed all the time. Then at that case, I think you should find that one pretty easy. 50 stacks of Corrosive Hunger means that you need to deliberately stay in the Vomit Lake for a little while, and that's going to mean you're going to be squishy. When you come back into the arena, you're going to be very susceptible to being hit in combat, but you should still be able to control Yargle with your Decoy Totem and still survive that one just fine. The hardest one is getting pulled under 3 times and not gaining 20 stacks of Corrosive Hunger. That's brutal. Like, this is going to require an extreme move speed character, and I really don't know how you're going to do this. We're going to have to play around with this one and see how to do it, but I think this is going to require precision use of a teleport move skill, and you will need to then be very good at understanding how that pulled under phase works. yeah, this one just looks nasty. It may also be that you can do this by use of a 2-player setup where you get pulled under 3 times. Each time you get pulled under, you log out, and you're in Discord chat with the other player. They do the actual mechanics of the underwater of the vomit river phase, and then they come back out into the arena. Then they call you back in. That'd be the other way I think you can do that. They did change the Yargle fight so that when there's no players in there, I think when you log out while you're in there, I think you come back to being in there again. So yeah, it's gonna take a lot of messing around. This is not going to be an easy one, and we're gonna have to really figure out how to do that. But I do think it will be a skill like Lightning Warp that can be done extremely fast. It can be made as an extremely fast move skill. I think is probably going to be the solution there. Let's try it out. Searing Exile conditionally is the next one. So 80% quantity again. Easiest way to do that will be Height of Hubris and an easily rolled one. Without being affected by Cauterized Flesh. I believe Cauterized Flesh is the debuff on the ground. So that's going to be one that's easiest to do probably on your first run of the Searing Exarch. I think you're going to want to do this on non-Uber version and Scoured, and just blitz the fight. Again, this is going to be a DPS check. Then, after completing we'll come to the Rolling Meteors in a sec. Without being hit by Annihilation, I think Annihilation is the firewall. So he casts the firewall. Oh no, actually, it's is it the Lightning Tendrils? It's the fire version of Lightning Tendrils that he does. I think it may be that. So that one's not that hard to not get hit by. You'll probably need to do this 10 times and maybe succeed 3 times at the Annihilation one. It's easy to stuff up, but it's not very hard. So just make a few attempts on that. Rolling Meteors phase is hilarious. After completing a Rolling Meteors phase without being hit by any Rolling Meteors from a set of Meteors cast while the Searing Exarch is below 20% health and without using any movement skills. So something a lot of people don't realize is the Exarch's Meteors phase gets nastier the lower his health is. And being under 20%, then he's going to have the Uber one. And without using any movement skills means that you are going to have to probably invest quite heavily in move speed and just very precision movement. This is going to be hard to do, but I think that your best strategy for this is going to be to bank up 4 or 5 Searing Exarch stones and just try them one after the other. The first time you'll probably make a mistake and come back in and do it again. There may be other ways you can do this, but that's the way that I would recommend going for it, is just save up a bunch, do them one after another after another. As for meteors impacting on player-created objects like Frostwall and totems and minions and the like, I don't know what the current status is there. I don't believe that you can impact them as easily as it used to. I don't think it works as well as it used to. But we'll have to test it out and see exactly how it works. And that looks like it's a really interesting challenge, one that's going to take a bunch of messing around. A couple of questions came up about Headhunter in that while in chat. So Headhunter is still going to be strong, but it's going to be worse than it used to be. And the impact on 5-way runs, however, I think 5-way runs are actually no longer going to be the same as they used to be. Like, they're not quite dead, but there is no longer going to be a potential to get 6,000 to 11,000 kills in them. I think we're going to see 4,000 to 5,000 kills, at which point 5-way legions are going to be more in line with pure breachstones and similar other content. So I think that the 5-way run economy is pretty much gone. We'll find out on that, but that's my initial thought. I don't believe that you can log out on the Rolling Meteors phase anymore. I think GGG patched that, and I think they fixed that so that it's no longer the case. But we'll have to see. A lot of this needs to be tested. These are first thoughts. This isn't me giving a guide because we don't know for certain as yet. And yes, Flicker Strike is getting hosed on that challenge because you will probably have accidentally used Flicker Strike while you were waiting for him to start saying, "The light of 1,000 suns." I think that we're going to see the opposite Alistair. I think this is going to be GGG getting back all of the players that played, that were over in Elden Ring World. GGG have learnt that there is a big market for people who from Elden Ring success. There's a big market for people who want to fail a bit in games, because that's why Elden Ring will probably be the most successful game of this year. Is that it says, well, We're catering to people who are looking for a game that treats them with respect, that says, okay, we don't think you're an idiot. We are not going to present a game that is designed so that even an idiot can beat it. We are going to challenge you, and we're going to make it feel like you've achieved something when you beat something. And I think that that's why GGG have been pushing away from the easy mode that they had around 3.11 with Harvest, when 3.11 did really badly. And I think they tested it. What's it like? Give players an item editor, and you see, huge drop off in player base over the first couple of weeks. And I think that these challenges are looking like, there's a couple of challenges here that I wouldn't have made. I think a couple of them are at the sort of, that's like, and the Harvest one's the worst. That's just an RNG fest. But a lot of them are looking pretty good. This looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Give this 7 attempts, fail 5 of them, then get it on your 6th or 7th, and it's going to feel amazing when you get it. It's no longer, it's like, you've stuffed up and there you go. And plus, a lot of people just aren't going to bother with some of these challenges, which is fine. I know that when Uberatsuri was added, there were challenges to beat her that I was like, I can't do that. I was nowhere near that level. But I had fun playing content designed for me, which was normal Atsuri, and I wasn't at the time Merciless Lab, but that's about where I was in progression. Merciless Lab was about the hardest content I could do, even though it didn't exist then. And I was having fun playing that sort of stuff. White tier maps. So, and actually Ritual didn't do well. There's this myth on Reddit that Ritual did well. Ritual matched Heist in retention, which was mediocre. That's based on day 30 retention from Steam stats. Now, Steam is not the best judge, but it did not do well. And then GGG realized, well, Harvest is all about making the top 0.1% of the player base have Uber items that no one else can get because they can't get enough of these Harvests. And then, it just widened the gap between casuals and experienced players and the like. The most successful league they've had in recent times were actually 3.9 and 3.10. 3.9 was Metamorph, and it was because it had the Conqueror's new endgame. 3.10 was Delirium. Delirium was the hardest league that they've had. Probably. 3.10 was 3.10 the hardest that the game has ever been? Possibly. No, 1.1 was the hardest it's ever been. 1.1 was the hardest it's ever been. 3.10 was probably second. And that's when they were doing really well. Thing is that there was world events at the time, obviously meant that people had more time indoors, but they continued in 3.11 as well, and 3.11 didn't do very well. And 3.12 picked up a bit, but didn't do all that well. And whereas Harvest was just blowing things apart, where people who weren't in TFT were getting the same gear that they had in Delirium League. Maybe actually less, because they were getting less loot. And people who were in TFT, i.e. most enfranchised players, were getting items that far surpassed old mirror items. Expedition was very hard as well, but I don't think Expedition was as hard as 3.10. Let me think on that. So Expedition, hardest content was Cirrus. Bosses was Cirrus, well that was in 3.10 as well. Cirrus was harder in 3.15. Maven was harder in 3.15 than 3.10. Simulacrum was... 3.15 was harder. 3.15 was harder. 3.15 they made a couple of balance mistakes early on, they stuffed up mana. Ultimatum had... let's get back to the challenges, I think. But, Delirium, though, you'll see that with the Delirium challenge here. That is genuinely difficult to get the 200 Splinters. Empowered map bosses, we don't really know much about how hard this is going to be. Defeat each of the following map bosses in an 8-mod rare map while they're empowered by unique Sentinels. This is something that we can't really judge yet. I have a feeling, I'm going to make a prediction here that could be wrong, that 1 or 2 of these will be really hard and the rest won't be. And that those ones will be rarer than the others as well. So we saw the Suncaller Asher one in the live stream announcement, and it just looked like the normal fight with higher stats. I didn't see anything remarkably different in it, but we'll have to see exactly how that works out. But you've got to do them in 8 mod maps, So you can pick your 8 mod maps. You can roll 20 park maps and then say, no, 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 no. Oh yes, this one's really easy for my build. So you can be selective there, and you're probably going to want to do that to make this a bit easier. But we just don't know. These are some of the harder bosses in the game. So Suncaller Asher has her healing. Melgara the Mutilator has a nasty phase near the end. Amalgam of Nightmares is Depraved Trinity, but with lower stats than the Act 9 boss has. This may have something with a Scorpion phase. We'll have to find out exactly what it does. Stone of the Currents is an easy boss. Chevron the Sickening is not. Chevron the Sickening could be very nasty, especially with multiple projectiles in play. Doedre the Defiler is the Shrieker one. So Shrieker Doedre is pretty scary if there's anything with this hard mode that from the Sentinel that causes it to penetrate the safe zones in there. And then you've got Fire and Fury and Lava Chamber is one of those bosses that you can lose control of its self-healing. So Lava Chamber, when it's standing on lava grates, it will be self-healing. And that self-healing is significant. You can turn that off, but doing so means running away from the boss, and it's not instantaneous. And then the Restless Shade just has a couple of really nasty skills. So that's going to be pretty nasty. Is Bramble Valley on the Atlas this time? I'm not sure. And Metafrag asks a good question there. Would you wait till the boss is low health and then press the Empower button? I don't believe that works. I believe that the boss will be healed to full at this point. And yeah, no Vile Temple in this. We'll have to see these. It may be that you can burst them down. It may be that there's a period of invulnerability. We'll have to work out exactly what's going on. But I think that these are going to be, like, given where they are in the list, I think they could be harder than people are expecting them to be. Uber Elder conditionally is really nasty. So after defeating 3 Madness Propagators within 5 seconds, Madness Propagators are the things that leave goo on the ground. So these things are scary. You need to leave them alive. So they spawn every 20 seconds. Sorry, no, they spawn every 40 seconds. It's every 20 seconds is a volatile anomaly. Then in the other 20 seconds, it's a Madness Propagator. So you're going to need to leave one of these alive, babysit it for 80 seconds. Then the next one needs to be alive for 40 seconds. That's the only way to get 3 of them alive at once. They're going to leave multiple goo piles on the ground. This is really hard. You need to have massive regeneration so that you can endure being in those goo piles. You're probably going to need to move them all to the top right of the screen, and you're going to need to do this while not dying to the Shaper and Elder's abilities. This is one of the scariest things around. Once you've done that, killing them in 5 seconds of each other is going to be easy. Without taking damage from the Shaper's Beam is probably the default way for beating this encounter. Like, you can... You get hit by it every now and again, but I think that if you do the Uber Elder encounter 4 or 5 times, you'll get this at least once. Without detonating any volatile anomalies is also really hard. So this one requires you to make them all run rings around the arena while they're following you, and you need to do this while surviving the other skills. This one's going to be really, really, really brutal. And then we've got the, after detonating 20 or more volatile anomalies, this is probably the easiest of them. Here, you're going to want to walk all of the anomalies to the top right corner of the screen and drop them in one place, on top of each other. That'll be the easiest way, I think, to do this. And this one is pretty mean, but it's not off the planet difficulty. It's just nasty. Good question. Can you crowd control the Madness Propagators in any way? Can you silence them? I do not know. I do not know if you can do that, and we're just going to have to play around and find out. But we'll see what happens with that. Next, we have Defeat the Maven conditionally. So Maven without being hit by Cascade of Pain has always been hard. It's been used before, and it is a very difficult thing to do. Much easier if you have extreme burst damage. After successfully completing the memory game at least 5 times means, well, you're going to get 3 by default. So this means you need to prolong the fight. I believe that the memory game is on a 45-second cooldown in phase 7 of the fight. So you will need to bring the Maven into cull range and run 2 additional otherwise unnecessary Maven games and get that one done. Next, while affected by Maven's punishment, this means you need to get pegged by one of the coil beams. The coil beams are the things that inflict punishment on you, and punishment is the thing that prevents you from, it lowers your max resist and it prevents you from being healed, like drops your regen to 0 of both life and ES from memory. It's pretty mean, and you need to do the killing blow while you're under the effect of that. I think the way to do this is to get the Maven into almost insta-kill range, then deliberately walk into the coil beams, and then take it out. Without being affected by Gravity Well, Gravity Wells are the little void zones that you detonate on the ground. So I don't actually know exactly how the timing on those works. So undoubtedly you can't dodge them forever. They have an acceleration in them, so you can't dodge them forever and run them around the arena like you can with volatile anomalies in the Uber Elder fight. So you're going to have to try and find a way to get the Gravity Well to just sit there. That's going to be really hard to do, and I do think that a number of people will skip this one as a result, but we'll see how it goes. Then we have Endgame Grinds, which is actually pretty normal, I think. Don't know how hard this one is. Defeat 100 5-mod rare monsters. We don't know how rare monsters with 5 mods will be. I think that's Nemesis mod. That's what me and a few other people have thought in the past, but we don't know exactly what that works. And then bring the Gorgon's Gaze unique helmet to Uber Elder. That might actually be the solution, Fabian. Do the Gravity Wells automatically detonate after a while? I've never seen it. I've never tried to play tag with them. I just thought they kept accelerating until they hit you. Which should try that out. I've got like 10 Maven sets left over from 317. Maybe we could give that a shot. And Dan is saying if you burst Maven super fast, there'll be no Gravity Wells. And that's probably actually the best way to do that. So an extreme burst damage to avoid any Gravity Wells spawning. And then at that point, nothing spawns, so you're alright. I think you're right, Dan. I think that is the way to go on that. So, extreme burst damage approach to cheese this one. Cheese Cascade of Pain as well at the same time with extreme burst damage. Maven's Punishment shouldn't be too bad. Maven's Punishment hurts, but it is 10 seconds, so you'll be fine. And completing the memory game 5 times is just one you'll do in another run. And you just mess around for a bit. Then we have the Endgame Grinds here. Defeat 100 Uber Bosses is probably not going to be on anyone's path to 4 here. Oh, maybe it is. I guess if you're doing any sort of boss kill service, you'll get that. Solo Delve Depth 600 is a lot. That is one of the nastier challenges. We've had that in the past. It is no joke to get to 600. And defeat 200 Tier 16 map bosses with at least 50 empowerment. We don't know what 50 empowerment is. So just going through some of the questions that are coming up here, we have Possessed Rogue Exiles is not so bad. So Possessed Rogue Exiles is a Rogue Exile that when you have Exiled Will allocated on your passive tree. Ruckus and Exiled Will, allocate both and you'll get that challenge done in next to no time, I think. That one will be pretty easy to do, I would expect. Metafrag is asking, does the keystone effects that add damage and reduce monster hit points, do they apply to pinnacle bosses? No, they only apply to maps, I believe. Lord Syncross is saying, yeah, to just delete the Maven like that is a lot of damage. It is, but softcore builds do it, and you can actually see boss killers that will do it with 6-player hit points. They'll be the sort of players that will be running these services, like the boss kill services. So I think that we've got a lot of stuff to think on here, but fundamentally keep in mind that if you used to get 36, the expectation is you'll get 24 and you will get the rewards that you would have got for 36 by hitting 24 in this. I think your 24 is probably going to cap out at 2 of the Uber bosses or so, and those Uber bosses will be easier than getting 36 was in this league, I reckon. How did I earn my Mage Blood this league? I got lucky on Gwenin. Gwenin gave it to me with perhaps 130 Astragalis. So I got very lucky, basically. That's how I got my Mage Blood. I was saving for a Headhunter when it happened. That is an excellent suggestion Myth has. And that is for Madness Propagators. Can you die, stay dead, and let them spawn, then portal back in and wipe them out? I do not know how time passes with respect to the scripted events. So the spawning of Madness Propagators and the spawning of the volatile anomalies. They're on a 20-second alternating timeline normally, but I don't know whether that continues when there's no players alive in the zone. And another suggestion that's come up for dealing with the Uber Elder one for the Madness Propagators is to stun them. Just trying to think how well you can stun those Madness Propagators. So you'd use Southbound and stun them. That may well be viable, and just keeping them alive. Yeah, they need to fix the issue with the memory game, and like it needs colorblindness support. It's honestly, it's way too dark as it is, and it needs to be improved. That it's I think that they really have not done that very well. Did I skip the Eater of Worlds one? Let's go back to that. Eater of Worlds conditionally. Oh yes, I did. Thank you for pointing that one out. So 80% quantity, again, same strategy as the other ones. It's roll 40% with easy mods, double it with Hydra Hubris. After beginning to drown at least 10 times, that actually probably happens if you're careless in the fight. I know that I had a lot of fun in the 317 challenge to do the Eater of Worlds without beginning to drown. I think I just did 3 attempts in a row and I got it on the second one. But it was just the first one I made a mistake. I got hit by one of the balls. So if you're hit by one of the slow-moving balls, that's when you begin to drown. And if you stay in contact with it for too long, then you end up actually just being instantly killed. So you'll need to just tap those balls a few times and walk away. That's pretty easily done. The fight's not that hectic, so you can mess around like that. Without being affected by more than 10 stacks of Inescapable Doom. Inescapable Doom, I think, is the laser that's fired during the phase where you've got to go and stand in all of the different... during the phase where you've got to stop the slam by standing in all of the different orbs. That should be pretty doable. And then increased AoE mod shouldn't make this fight that bad. That said, they are making some changes to this fight, so we're going to have to see how it goes. But be interesting to see what's going on. Samara's asking about the various items that grant bleed immunity, no longer giving immunity to corrupting blood. I don't know whether that was an oversight or intended. I think it may have been intended because they are intending for them to be different things now, but I'm not sure. I can't speak for them. 50 empowerment is a query about 50 empowerment. That's something related to Sentinels, but we don't know the exact details. With Sentinels, when you set off a Sentinel, it grants some mod called empowerment to enemies, and it'll be numerical, and it'll be something that the Sentinel itself will tell you how much it's giving, but I don't know how special 50 is or how special 50 is or isn't. And yeah, so it's... Yeah, I think there'll be a bunch of ways that you can do the Uber Elder stuff. The key thing with Uber Elder, like, this is probably easier than doing what we've seen of the Uber Elder. The Uber Elder that was outlined, like that we saw the short video of that had Shape of Bullet Hell during it. Shape of Bullet Hell is really quite difficult to dodge. As well as that, it has technical issues, but the actual fight is really difficult to dodge because it's just mechanically hard. So we'll have to see exactly what goes on there. But yeah, Bleed and Corrupting Blood are different to each other now. So anyways, that is the challenges. My closing thoughts are that, yeah, this is definitely mean. Getting the Ophidian set, so that's the one that you get... the Ophidian set that you get 24 challenges gets it including the wings. 18, I think, gets it without the wings. That's going to be very achievable for people that have historically got 30 or so in the past. Getting the Ophidian Lord set is going to be something that's going to be genuinely tough. And we'll see how it goes. I do think that one thing to keep in mind with the Maven's memory game is that you can team up with other players for that. Not that, like, you will be dead in the instance so you let the Maven kill you very early in the fight, and then they do the memory game. If someone else has got the ability to do it really well, you should get credit for it that way. Anyways, I think I might call it at this point, unless people have got any other particular questions. I saw Tenky in chat before it. If you're still there, Tenky, are you intending to stream later today? Because I wanted to test out Live Redirect. If you are intending to stream and going to set up your stream, let me know. Otherwise, I might just check if Tenky is on stream in the background. I don't know if he... I might just have a quick look and see if Tenky is currently on. And then if they are, then I'm going to try and get a live redirect. It's a new feature that YouTube have brought in. It doesn't look like he's live at the moment. Let's not have sound on. No, it doesn't look like he's live at the moment. It's kind of hard to tell on YouTube. Sort of messing around with YouTube there. How hard do I think it is to get 38 of 40 in this league? I think it is meaningfully harder than getting 40 was in 317, but probably in line with getting 40 in previous leagues. That's my gut reaction. I am not absolutely certain. What am I league starting? I am currently playing around with starting Absolution until like the end of day one, at which point I would then want to jump over to from Absolution, change to possibly Arakali's Fang. Arakali's Fang will be a few exalts early in the league, so I wouldn't suggest doing that unless you're confident you can get that. But if you can't get a few exalts day one, you should be able to get the Dead Reckoning Jewel and swap to Skeleton Mages. Can I have a link to this page? Yes, you can, Tiberius. Let me just see if I've got that still on. I think I still have that on my Control V, don't I? There you go. That's the that is the official list there. One last thing I'll do before I call this stream a close. I'm just going to put a link in the chat to my Discord. So if people are interested in continuing various discussions, I will put up a link to that. And I will need to manually approve you over there, which should get done pretty soon. So let me just do that there. That's the Discord. I'll manually approve you so that you've got the ability to participate, and that shouldn't take too long. Anyways, I am going to call this at this point and say thank you all for showing up. May your Valobs have interesting results, and then I will think on that alt quality gem stuff. I'll think on that, Aussie. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to take a break from Heist, actually. I like Heist still, but I don't want to burn out on it, so I'm going to skip Heist a lot this league. But I'll just buy them off you if I find if you've got one and I want it. I'll just buy it. You know, I'll buy it from you if you're the cheapest person, and I'll buy it from someone else if they're not. You know, don't need to give me anything. Just go with it at fair market price. So thanks all. May your Valobs have interesting results, and I will see you around. This stream should be rewindable and rewatchable, and you can also watch at a different speed. Like YouTube lets you watch things at 125%, which is like so much better for something that's mostly spoken like this.